Just a minute. Can you please Yeah, I hope you are able to see my screen. So I hope you are able to hear me as well. So in the previous lecture, we saw operator precedence. We also looked at sort of BODMAS. BODMAS is only for arithmetic operators, and within that division and multiplication have the same precedence, and addition and subtraction. Yeah, why do you switch on mics in between? I don't understand. If I listen anyone else disturbing in between, I'll just mute everyone. I'm sorry, even genuine people who want to ask doubts are being put at inconvenience because of some miscreants. Anyway, so what? Can someone admit these guest people? I don't know why people are joining as guests. Okay. Yeah. So BODMAS is mainly for arithmetic operations, but we have many other operations in C. Apart from arithmetic operators, we have logical, relational, assignment operators, and so on, right? So BODMAS is not sufficient for understanding the precedence of all these operators, right? So we looked at this operator precedence chart where all different kinds of operators used in C are ordered according to their precedence. So as you go from top to bottom, you will see the precedence going from high to low. Okay. And within a particular block, all the operators are of same precedence. All right. And we saw that most of the operators. So, okay. In the case of operators with different precedence, there is no ambiguity because the higher precedence operator is always executed first, right? If two operators are of different precedence, then obviously higher precedence operator will be executed first. So there is no ambiguity there. But in the case of operators with the same precedence, one needs to resolve the order considering left to right associativity or right to left associativity depending on the operators. Most of the operators follow left to right associativity except a few like assignment operators, unary operators, and ternary operators. Only these three kinds of operators follow right to left associativity. All the other operators, the rest of all operators, follow left to right associativity. So, for instance, if you look at these three kinds of operators, assignment operator, I told you, if you have two or more assignments, then the rightmost assignment is executed first, and then the left assignment, and then the left assignment, and so on. So it goes from right to left. Okay. Similarly, unary operators, the rightmost operator is executed first, then the left one, and so on. All right. And then, so ignore this for now. Okay, ignore this for now. Ternary condition, ternary operator, we will look at it in a while. Okay. So these three operators have right to left associativity. And how to evaluate an expression with many operators? Given operators in an expression, you classify them into higher and lower order operators. And then within same level operators perform left to right or right to left evaluation depending on operator associativity. So this is an example where we have a large expression with many operators, right? So here we need to first order the operators based on their precedence. There are two operators with highest precedence, that is modulus operator and division operator. But since In case you have any doubts, please ask in the chat or raise your hand. Although I may not get a notification, I need to see in between. Okay. So there are two operators with the highest precedence. One is modulus operator and another is division operator. So now since there are two operators with the same precedence, which one should we execute first? So here associativity comes in. So among arithmetic operators, the associativity is left to right. All right. So only three operators, like we saw above, only these three operators associativity is right to left. All other operators associativity is left to right. Okay. So modulus and division operator, their associativity is left to right. So first we execute that operator which comes on the left hand side. So modulus comes first. So execute 5 mod 8. Answer is 5. Then division 22 by 7. This is integer division. So the answer is 3, not 3 point something. All right. So you have 5 and 3. Now next important operator is subtraction. So you just perform that operation 5 minus 3. The result is 2. The next important operator is bitwise right shift. Okay. So 2 bitwise right shift 2 times. That is like 2 divided by 2 square, right? 2 bitwise right shift 1 time means 2 divided by 2. 2 bitwise right shift 2 times means 2 divided by 2 square. 2 bitwise right shift k times means 2 divided by 2 power k. All right. So 2 bitwise right shift 2 means 2 divided by 2 square. That is 2 by 4. That is 0, right? It is 0.5. But since this is integer division kind of a thing, basically you are shifting bits to the right. Okay. So like you see 2 in binary form is 1 0, but when you shift it to the right 2 times, 2 bits are erased, and on the left you fill it with zeros. Okay. So finally you are left with a 0. So 2 right shift 2 2 times means 0. So this value is 0. Okay. So this expression value is 0. Now after bitwise right shift, the next important operation is bitwise OR. Okay. All this we are able to say because of this operator precedence chart. Okay. So here we need to check what is the highest precedence. Modulus and division are of highest precedence among the given operators in the expression. Then subtraction, then bitwise right, then bitwise OR, then logical AND. Okay. So bitwise OR we need to perform 6 or 4. How is bitwise OR performed? You convert each of the operands into their binary forms. So 6 binary form is 110, 4 binary form is 100, and you do bitwise OR. 0 or 0 is 0, 1 or 0 is 1, 1 or 1 is 1, 110. So you get 6 again. So the output of bitwise OR on two numbers 6 and 4 is 6. Okay. So the value of this expression is 6. Now the final operation is logical AND. Okay. So 6 and 0. This whole expression value we just said it is 0. So 6 logical AND deals with like true false values, right? So anything 0 is false, anything non-zero is true. So 6 and 0 means it is like true and false. So the output is false. So final output is 0. Okay. So this is how we sort of used operator precedence to evaluate this large expression. Okay. These are all the operators which are there in this expression, and we ordered them based on their precedence. So top operators have the higher precedence compared to the below operators. Okay. Fine. And then we looked at flowchart. These are flowchart symbols, and decision box indicates if else condition, right? Any logic in program starts with conditional operator. All right. So without conditional operator, there is not even any logic. It is a plain code. Okay. You read a number, print it, add two numbers, print them, something like that. But if this, do something, if something else, do something else, right? So this kind of logic flow is possible only when you start incorporating conditional statements like if else, else if, switch statements, all those things. Until then, there is not much logic in the programs we write. Okay. So to incorporate logic, the first entry point is conditional statements, and any branching out also happens because of these kind of conditional statements. Otherwise the statements are executed in a normal linear order, right? But for you to take one branch on one condition and another branch on another condition, that is possible only using conditional statements. Okay, so this is the flowchart of if else block. If the condition is true, you execute first block. If the condition is false, you execute second block. This flowchart you can translate into the if else code like this. So if some condition, then execute statements in block 1. Else, which means if the condition is false, then you come to else block. If the condition is true, you execute the statements in if block. If the condition is false, you come to else block and execute statements in block 2. Okay, now one more thing which you need to notice is this so-called condition is present only in the if statement. It is not present in the else statement, right? You don't need a condition in the else statement, because if the condition is false, you automatically come to the else statement, right? So whatever is left out, you need not mention it again separately. Whatever you want to consider, you are anyway mentioning in the if condition. Whatever is left out, you automatically come to the else condition. All right, so in the else statement, you need not and should not give something called a condition. That so-called condition comes only in the if and else if statements, not in the else statement. Okay, then we looked at some other example of nested if else. I don't want to spend time again. Finally, we looked at something called if else chain or switch statement. Switch statement I didn't start yet, but if else chain we saw. So this is like if condition 1 is true, you execute block 1, or if condition 2 is true, you execute block 2. Else if condition 3 is true, you execute block 3, and so on. Else if condition n is true, you execute block n. Else, which means if all the previous conditions are false, then automatically by default you execute block n plus 1. Okay, so this is how it looks. If condition 1 is true, execute block 1. If else if, which means if condition 1 is not true, if condition 2 is true, so that we express as else if condition 2, execute block 2. Else if, which means condition 1 and 2 are not true, if condition 3 is true, execute block 3, and so on. Finally, if all first n minus 1 conditions are not true, if nth condition is true, execute block n, or if all the first n conditions are not true, then whatever is remaining, you just come into the else block and execute block bn plus 1. Okay, so in the else condition, in the else statement, there is no condition, right? So this is something you need to notice. In all the previous statements, there is a condition also. In if statement, there is a condition. In else if statement, there is a condition. In all else if statements, there is a condition, and then followed by statements or statement block. Whereas in else statement, there is only else keyword followed by a statement block. There is no condition in between, because there is no condition to check. Okay, now the same thing can be executed as a switch statement also. We will come to that in a while. Okay, in case you have any questions, you put in the chart. I will keep checking the chart panel in between. Okay, so before I come to the switch statement, I'll just mention one more thing. Let me copy this. So here, one thing you need to notice is this else statement is optional. This is a overall, this entire thing is an overall structure, is the complete holistic possible structure. Okay, but it does not mean that you should use this entire structure every time. Some portions of the structure are optional. If you want, you can use them, or if you don't want, you need not use them. Okay, depending on the problem you're solving, right? Sometimes else statement you don't need. You can stop with if, else if, and so on. You can stop with some series of else if statements. All right, or sometimes these else if statements you don't need. Okay, you just need if and else statement. right? So when else is optional, you can just use if to if followed by some series of else if. When these else if statements are optional, you can use if statement followed by an else statement. Okay, or sometimes all these statements are optional, like else if statements and else statement. You don't need any of them, just an if statement is sufficient, right? In that case only use if statement. Okay, so let me use color coding. No, okay, I'll do it later. Yeah, okay, but one thing which you need to notice is this particular statement is not optional, it is non-optional. You cannot have any of these statements without a first if statement. Okay, you can have if statement without any of these statements, but the converse is not true. You cannot have any of these statements without an if statement to begin with. It is like any normal even in normal day to day language we say like this, no? If this, do this, else do that. You never start a statement like otherwise do this. Otherwise, even for you to say otherwise, first you should say what is the default condition, right? You never start a statement with just otherwise. The other person will ask, what do you mean by otherwise? What is the default case? And then otherwise will get a meaning, right? So else is like that. You can't just start with else if or else. First you should say if something happens, do something else, which means if the original condition is not satisfied, only then you go to else, right? All right, so if condition is not optional, else if and else statements are individually optional or together they are optional. Okay, so that is one thing. And another thing, the structure of, just a minute, if you notice, the structure of if statement is if some condition followed by some statement. Okay, now this entire thing is an if statement. All right, similarly the structure of if else is like if some condition followed by statement 1, else you don't need any condition in else, followed by statement 2. Okay, this entire thing is an if else statement. Okay, and this particular thing, this entire structure this is like if else if chain statement. Okay, if else if else, fine. Now these are what kind of statements? Do you remember we discussed different kinds of statements in the beginning, like input output statements, expression statements, and so on. Many statements we discussed. Can someone tell me what kind of statements these are? Can someone mention in the chart? If statement, else if statement, what kind of statements are these? They have a name. We discussed different kinds of statements, if you remember. Okay. Yes, exactly. Conditional statements. Very good. So just to recap, we discussed different kinds of statements. Like uh, input output statements, expression statements, and then these conditional statements, also called as selection statements, also called as if else statements. Okay, and then we also we just mentioned, we will look at them later, like iterative statements. These are like loops. And then jump statements, we will look at an example of jump statement today. So this is, for instance, break, continue, return, exit. These are jump statements. They let you jump from one point in the code to another point in the code, or they let you jump out of the code itself. Okay, so these are different jump statements. And um, we also mentioned this compound. Yeah, sorry, it seems I got disconnected. Can you hear me now? Hello. Okay, okay, fine. I'll repeat. Um, yeah. So this portion you heard compound statements. So there is another kind of statement called compound statements. A compound statement is nothing but a series of statements put in a block. How do you make a block? By enclosing it in curly braces. Okay, so you put some series of statements in curly braces, that becomes a block of statements. Such a block of statements is called a compound statement. And a compound statement, in a compound statement, each single statement ends with a semicolon, but the compound statement again does not need to end with a semicolon. So you need not put a semicolon after this closing bracket. Okay, you need to put semicolons only after the individual statements here. Okay, so a statement can be a compound statement as well. So when you put many statements in an if block or a for block or a while loop, we'll see later, those are all compound statements. Fine. So this overall expression, not expression, sorry, this overall statement is an if statement. Now within this particular statement, which is part of if statement, this can be any kind of statement. It can be a compound statement, it can be an if else statement, or a for loop, or it can be an expression statement. It can be anything. All right, so you get an if statement, and so on. So you can form larger if statements, if else statements. Again, this statement 1 can be anything, this statement 2 can be anything. So you form larger and larger statements using these constructs. Okay. Okay, sorry, I shared the screen. I don't know why. I shared it. Just a minute. Can you see it now? No. Okay. Okay, let me just try to log out and log in again. 1 minute. Can you see it now? No. Okay. Okay, got it. I don't know why. Let me try sharing only the particular thing. Now, okay, fine. So, all right, so you're able to see the notes, right? Okay. So I was saying compound statement is nothing but a block of statements written like this, right? So S1, S2, Sn, some statement 1, statement 2, and so on. They are enclosed in curly braces. That is called a compound statement. Each of the individual statements should end with a semicolon. You need not put a semicolon again after the compound statement. After the closing bracket, you don't need to put a semicolon again. Okay. Now, so an if condition statement, this entire thing is an if statement, but within this if statement, there is a keyword if followed by a condition followed by a statement. This particular statement can be any kind of statement. It can be if statement or compound statement or a for loop statement or expression statement, anything. Similarly, in this if else statement, the syntax is the keyword if followed by some condition followed by some statement 1, again followed by keyword else followed by statement 2. So this statement 1 again can be any kind of statement. It can be a compound statement, it can be for loop or whatever. Similarly, statement 2 also can be any kind of statement. Okay, so any of these, block 1, block 2, block n, they are statements. They can be single statements or compound statements or whatever they are. So you form larger constructs in this form. Okay, now one common mistake which students make is so suppose if I write something like this, say if a mod 2 equal to 0, okay, normally what I want to write, I say printf a is even. Okay, this will work. This is not a problem. Fine. So this entire thing is following the if syntax. So this is if followed by a condition, or this is also called expression sometimes, followed by a statement. Okay, but now some students, they put semicolon here. Okay, and in the next line they start curly braces and write this. Okay, what will happen if I put a semicolon here? I should not put semicolon, but what happens if I put a semicolon? Can someone tell me? If I put a semicolon immediately after the if condition, right, before I write the statement, what will happen? Well, I am allowing mic. You can unmute and speak. A is even will be printed. Okay. A is even will be printed. So do you mean to say else could not be read? Okay. So first A is even will be printed. Do you mean to say that statement will be printed even when A is not even? A is even will be printed anyway, even when you don't put semicolon, because it will enter the if condition. If A is not even and you put a semicolon, what will happen?
Sir, it will be an error.
There will be an error. Okay. Is that the right answer? Anyone else?
Syntax error.
Okay, so people are saying it is syntax error. All right. So let's see. So let me share. Let me just share. Let me try to share whole screen now. If it doesn't come now, then I will share it again. I'll share the notes again because I want to go to the terminal. Can you see it? Can you see my screen? Okay, good, great. All right, so now let me show the terminal. So let me show the code a bit. So let's say A is whatever 8. Okay, now I say if A mod 2 equal to 0, I say I'll give the normal statement first. A is even. Okay, now it should print A is even, right? Because A is actually even, right? Sorry, excuse me. Okay, yeah, it printed A is even, right? Now let me change the code a bit. Now let me put a semicolon. Okay, now let me, instead of 8, let me give 7. Okay, now 7 is not even, so it should not enter the if condition, so it should not print anything. Fine. S.C, it is not printing anything. Fine. Now let me put a semicolon after if. Okay, now according to you, it should give me an error, right? So let us see what it does. It's just warning us. It is saying if clause does not guard something, and then it's saying this statement, but the letter is misleadingly indented as if it were guarded by if. You will understand what it means. It is giving only a warning. It's not an error. Okay, I compiled it. Now I'm running it. See, it is still printing A is even. First of all, it did not give an error. Second, it is also printing the statement. Okay, so now tell me what is happening. It didn't give any error. Second thing, it is even printing the statement, although it should not be printed, right? A is not even, but still it is printing it. So can someone tell me what is happening?
When we put a semicolon, I think the system is considering it a declaration rather than a conditional statement.
Declaration. Declaring what? What are we declaring? Declaration means you assign a variable.
Oh yeah,
And some.
not declaration, but in the sense that we put a semicolon and that's the end of the statement.
Hmm.
So it's not evaluating the bracket or the block after that.
It's not that it's not evaluating. It is not linking the if statement with the block, next block after
Yes,
the
sir.
semicolon. Yeah. So let me tell you. Yeah, please mute mics, please. Others are being disturbed. They're unable to ask anything. If I disable mic for everyone. Okay. So this semicolon, when you put a semicolon here, what is happening is it thinks there is a statement here. Okay. It does not think it is an error. It thinks there is a statement here. Okay. Before the semicolon. And this statement, there is another kind of statement called null statement or empty statement. Okay. So among the statements we saw, there is another kind of statement called null statement. So now, according to if syntax, this syntax is done. My if statement is available to me incomplete. Okay. So this is my if statement now. Because I put a semicolon, this is a null statement. So my if syntax is satisfied. If keyword followed by a condition followed by some statement, it can be any statement. In this case, it is a null statement and then semicolon, done. If statement, syntax is satisfied. Okay. Now what is happening? Now this printf a is even. This is just an independent statement. It is not part of the if block. If block is closed because you put a semicolon. Okay. Now this is just independent statement. It will print this statement anyway. It will not check for this condition anymore. It checked for this condition and then you said do nothing. You closed the if block, over. Now you are saying okay, printf a is even. It's just printing it. That's it. So if you put a semicolon, it will not give you an error and it will give you some unexpected output, and it will be difficult for you to decode why this output is coming. All right, just because this semicolon which you are putting unintentionally. Okay. So be careful to not put a semicolon after the if condition immediately. So to avoid that, a good practice is if a mod 2 equal to 0, rather than putting the opening bracket in the next line, you put the opening bracket immediately here and then write whatever you want to write inside the if block, printf a is even, whatever, and then close. So usually people, there are two kinds of people who start the opening bracket in the next line, people who start the opening bracket immediately after the condition in the same line. Okay. I follow the second method, so that we don't make these kinds of mistakes like I put a semicolon, and if we put the opening bracket in the same line, we don't make the mistake of putting semicolon in the same line. Okay. But if we put the opening bracket in the next line, we may make the mistake of putting semicolon in the previous line. Okay. So put the opening bracket in the same line and ensure that you don't put a semicolon here. Okay. And you don't need a semicolon after this also, because like I said, this, once you put curly braces, this statement becomes a compound statement. Okay. And you don't need a semicolon after the compound statement, after the closing bracket of the compound statement. You only need a semicolon with after each statement inside the compound statement. Okay. Now this worked. Now I will show you one more thing. Now if I put an else statement after this, else printf a is odd. Okay. Now can someone tell me what the output will be? Come on, quickly. We don't have much time. We need to discuss many more things.
ఆడుకుంటుంది ఏంట్రా
Okay, Chetan, you are getting an absent. So it's better you even get out of the class. Pushpal Chetan. Someone else can answer me quickly. What will happen now? I have an if statement followed by a semicolon and a print statement and then an else and a print statement in the else block. What will happen now?
Should give an error.
Error. Why?
Sir, else will be executed. The print, if you print A is odd.
Sorry, it will print A is odd.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So one is saying it's an error, another is saying it will print A is odd. Okay. Any other answers?
Sir, sorry, sir. Yeah, error, sir.
Sorry?
It will be error, sir. My bad. It will be error.
It will be error. Why error?
Sir, because we close the if statement. So if is not, and after that we wrote an extra line of code. So without if, we can't write an else statement.
Exactly. Exactly. Right. It will give an error because this if statement is closed here with the semicolon. Okay. After that, you put some other arbitrary statement. So the connection, the if is closed already. Now you put some other statement. Now there is no if. This is a normal statement. And then you write else suddenly. This else is confused. Where is the if? It cannot see this if. This if is closed and then you are putting some other statement here, right? And after that you are writing an else. So this else is disconnected with this if because you close this with the semicolon. So it will give an error. So let's see. It gave an error. You see? Else without a previous if. That's it. But if only you just remove this semicolon, it will work. Now this if is closed with this, okay, and then immediately followed by else. So this if is visible to the else. Okay. So yeah, you see now it ran without any warning or error. Now it's saying A is odd. Now it is working neatly. Okay. So that one single small semicolon which you had put changed everything. Okay. It either creates an error or it makes the program misbehave. Okay. Behave in an odd manner. Fine. So keep in mind this semicolon thing. Don't put it unnecessarily. So the best way to avoid this is always put the opening bracket immediately after whatever block you are starting in the same line rather than starting it in the next line. Okay. Yeah. Fine. Now we're done with that. Now okay. Now there can be some cases where we have a long if else chain, right? For instance, some example, like suppose if I want to enter an alphabet and suppose some character I want to take as input, and if the character is something I want to print a country name starting with that character. Say suppose if my character is A, then so I'm writing pseudocode here. This is not exact syntax. So pseudocode is looks like a code, but it's not exact code. You need to modify it to exact code before implementing it. So say if some character is A, print say America. Okay. Else if it is not A, but say if it is B, say you print Brazil, and so on. If the character is C, else if character is C, you print Canada. Okay, and so on. And finally, else if character is Z, you print Zimbabwe or something like that. And finally, else, which means if it is none of the 26 letters, you just say print invalid entry. Okay, this is problem not problem. So this is a long way of writing a code. You are checking, you're writing every time if, else if, else if, else if, and so on. And also say if it is not a single character, but if it is a long expression, right? And if this expression's value is this, in every line you should write if this expression equal to A, else if this expression equal to B, else if this expression equal to C, and so on. Okay. So to simplify it further, particularly to handle these kind of cases, we have something called the switch statement. So the syntax of a switch statement is, say, like switch expression and then brackets, and say what is the value of this expression. If the value of this expression, it can be anything, it can be A or B or C and so on up to Z. So in case the expression's value is A, you do something, you print America, and then you add a statement called break. I will tell you why later. Similarly, if the expression's value is B, you print Brazil, and then again add statement break, and so on. All right. And you do like that for each character. Okay. Finally, if it is not any of the alphabets, all right. So like here, what did we say? Else invalid entry. You should print invalid entry. Similarly, the else condition here is represented using a keyword called default. Default means it does not fit any of the previous cases. In the default case, so I'll write it here. Default, you say print invalid entry. Okay. And here you don't need the break statement because this is the last statement in the list, but break you can put if you want, but it is optional for the last condition in the switch statement. Okay. So this entire thing is part of the switch statement. Now, the only thing you need to keep in mind is in switch statement, the expression should evaluate to a number or a literal. Literal means character. Okay. So this thing is called a constant expression. Okay. It can't be any other expression. You see, you can't have arbitrary expressions here. What if expression evaluates to some variable? It never happens, right? Case X or case Y or case Y plus Z, right? Or case X greater than 5. These kind of expressions can go here. Okay. But they cannot be value of any other expression, right? Here case means, when I say case A, we mean this expression's value is A. Or when I say case B, this expression's value is B. So the value of an expression is always some constant or some letter. Okay, some number or some letter. It cannot be another expression, right? It cannot be Y plus Z, or it cannot be X greater than 5. This cannot be value of any expression. So a switch statement expression is a normal expression in the condition, but when you come to cases, they are the value an expression can take, and that value is usually a constant or a character. Okay, so that is something you need to keep in mind. And then okay, and then now in the if statement I mentioned, okay, you will learn a little more about switch statement in today's tutorial. I just want to quickly mention about ternary operator. Now in the if statement, I said there are different in statements. I said there are different kinds of statements: input, output, expression, conditional, iterative, etc. Input, output is also part of expression statement, so I'll not write it separately. Okay, so scanf and printf are also expression statements. Okay, but all the others, they are not expression statements, and only expression statements, only expression statements return a value. Not every statement has a value or returns a value. Only expression statement returns a value. Okay. All other statements like if statement, for loop statement, while loop statement, or jump statement. Okay. Break. This break statement, I said jump statement. In switch, we see a break statement. So the idea is if you input A, it will print America and break out of the switch statement. And if there are any statements after the switch statement, outside the switch statement, so some statement n plus 1. So after it prints America, it breaks, comes here and executes this statement, then this statement, and so on. Okay. Suppose if you input B, it will come directly here. It will print Brazil. And since you have a break statement, it will not look at any other statements. It will break out of the switch statement and starts executing these statements. Okay. In case you don't give a break statement, it will just by default execute other cases below it until it sees a break statement. That is how a switch functions. All right. So it will be explained a bit in the tutorial and actually tomorrow's lab also. But I just introduced it to you because you will be solving a couple of problems in today's tutorial. Fine. So the point is the case condition is used to decide the entry point. If it is A, it will enter the switch statement here. If it is B, it will enter the switch statement here. If it is D, it will enter the switch statement somewhere else. But the exit point is decided by the break statement. Okay. If you don't have break statement, then whatever statements are there below the current case statement, it will just execute all those. Whatever print statements are inside those case statements, it will execute those. It will go inside those case statements, although those cases are not matching the input case. That is how switch functions. It has some uses somewhere, but right now, don't worry about that. That's how switch functions. So the entry point is decided by the expression value, but the exit point is not decided by the expression value. Exit point is decided by where the break statement occurs in the sequence of statements after the current entry point. That's all. It will break only when it sees a break statement. Otherwise, it will just execute all the statements below that. Okay, that's how a switch works. And default means if none of the cases match, then default will be executed. But if any of the previous cases match, it enters those cases. And if there is no break statement until it sees default, it will enter even the default statement. Okay, it may be a bit confusing. You just need to go back and read a bit about it. And also in tutorial, you will learn a bit about it. Okay, just one more thing I want to mention. Like I said, statements, different kinds of statements we have. Only expression statements return a value. No other statements return a value. So if you take this compound statement, this if statement, it does not have any value. This statement inside, if it is an expression statement, it will have a value. But this statement as a whole, if followed by a condition followed by a statement, it does not have a value as a whole. It does not return any value. Okay. Similarly, this entire structure, it does not return any value. So I'll just give one small example and stop. Suppose if you have two numbers, you want to find the max number among these two. What do? We write a code like if A greater than B, print A, else print B. Okay. Now it is only printing A or B. This code as a whole is not returning anything. Fine. But there is another thing. This same thing can be converted into a single line expression using something called ternary operator. So ternary operator looks something like this. If A greater than B, then return A, else return B. Okay. So if this evaluates to true, you return the first thing. Or if this evaluates to false, you return the second thing. Fine. This is how it works. Now, since it returns one of these values, this entire expression has a value. This is an expression statement. Okay. This is an expression and this is an expression statement. Why? Because you're just using an operator and some operands. So this is an expression. It returns a value based on the first operand evaluates to true or false. Okay. And this value you can store in some other variable like this. Say max equal to this entire expression. If A is greater than B, it will return A. So A will be stored in max. If it is false, it will return B. So B will be stored in max. Okay. So one fundamental difference between if statement and this ternary operator is this returns a value, whereas this does not return a value. This is basically if else only. Okay. Another simple thing, another important thing I want to tell, in the ternary operators, In the associativity, I mentioned that ternary operators are right to left associative. Okay, but you should not confuse right to left associativity with the order of executing the operands within one ternary operator. So what do I mean? You see, when you have only one ternary operator like A, question mark B, C, this is only one ternary operator. Okay, here the question of associativity does not come. Associativity comes only when you have two or more ternary operators. So when you have only one ternary operator, the order of evaluation is not right to left. The operands are evaluated from left to right. So first this is evaluated, then if it is true, this will be returned, else this will be returned. Okay, so for a single ternary operator, the order of evaluation of operands is from left to right only. But if you have another ternary operator, say question mark D followed by E, now the question comes, which question mark should I take first? So now right to left associativity will be applied. So this will help you to place the brackets properly. So you group this first and then you group this. Okay, now within this again you should, now this is a single ternary operator. Now within this you should first evaluate this, then this, then this. Now based on whether C is true or false, it will return either D or E. So this entire expression will have some value, say D or E. I'm calling it as V. Okay, now you got A question mark B followed by V. Now this will be evaluated, then this will be evaluated. This is anyway evaluated already. Okay, so this is the difference. So the point is, right to left associativity is across operators, not operands within an operator. So don't confuse both. Okay, so this is what I wanted to say. I also actually wanted to cover increment decrement operators and assignment operators, but due to lack of time I can't cover. In tutorials and tomorrow's lab they will be covered. Okay, and one more thing I want to mention is, whatever is covered in either lecture or tutorial or lab, everything is part of your syllabus for the exam or in general also. Okay, so you can't say, okay, this is not covered in the lecture, this is only covered in the tutorial, so how can you ask this in the exam? No, nothing like that. Entire content can't be covered only in lectures. So some content is covered in lectures, rest is covered in labs, rest is covered in tutorials and so on. So everything, if it is any topic, if it is touched upon in any of these places, it is part of the syllabus. Okay, so yeah, so that's it. So let me take attendance and close. Any doubts? If you have any doubts, let me know. Okay, all right, so all the best for your exams. Meet you after the exams. Bye.